So if you're here to learn about how to get started with CAP, you're in the right place. We are with the Constitutional Rights Foundation, with staff of the Constitutional Rights Foundation. My name is Laura Wesley. I'm there in that picture on the far right.
I'm Gregorio Medina.
And I'm Sarah Badawi.
And so for those of you who might be new to CRF, we're a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization located in Los Angeles. That nonpartisan piece is super important to us. That's why we're trusted across the nation in providing information and publications. We provide multiple points and multiple viewpoints to a particular issue or problem. We let students come up with their own decisions. So we don't advocate one way or the other. So locally here in Los Angeles, we have programming. We also work statewide. We're in charge of the mock trial program for the state of California. And then nationally, we have our Bill of Rights in Action, which is a publication that gets sent out to about 40,000 teachers across the nation. And it's free, so if you want to get that publication, there's ready to go lessons with discussion, questions, and activities. You can go to our website and get that publication for delivered to your email or snail mail by registering on our website. We also have a teacher-to-teacher collab where we group with teachers nationally on discussion strategies. And we also have our civic action project, which is why we're here today, to help you learn a little bit more about how you can do CAP in your classroom. So not only are we going to share with you how you can do CAP and introduce you to what civic action project is and give you the resources to do so, we're also hoping to cultivate a community of CAP teachers. That, you know, you all are doing the same project, and we want you to know that you're not isolated, that there is a whole CAP community out there that you can outreach to get suggestions, to get tips, to get feedback, to share your successes, to share your challenges. And we also have teacher leaders who are experienced CAP teachers who can also help you along the way. All right, so
those are our objectives for the webinar for today. We also have some longer term objectives for building this community that Laura mentioned. What our hope is that after this webinar today, you will start teaching CAP and let us know how it's going, that you'll participate in online reflection and coaching from those CAP teacher leaders who Laura mentioned. This idea for providing that kind of support and coaching came from a project that some of you may be familiar with that Laura mentioned before as well, our T2T collab. We have one of our T2T teacher leader alums, Avo, who's attending this webinar this afternoon. So he knows very well, and that we hope some of the rest of you can get to know as well, that what we learned was from this national program of teachers trying out different kinds of discussion strategies and then reflecting on their practice together, we found that really created a sense of community and a sense of professional growth that we were really excited about encouraging for teachers. And so, like we've experienced with other projects from CRF, for this CAP professional development that we're going to be offering, this is really an opportunity for teachers to learn from each other. There is no judgment here. We know that people are taking risks and trying something different. Maybe you're getting out of your comfort zone a little bit, but you're trying something new because you think it'll benefit your students. So we're really excited to provide support and community to make that as seamless as possible for you. And then part of that process, besides that online coaching, will be a couple more webinars later in the fall.
So what is Civic Action Project? And it's got a little subtitle right there. It says, a web-based practicum for teaching U.S. government. CAP is intentionally designed to address 12th grade government standards, but we have teachers from 9th, 10th, 11th grade also employing CAP for a variety of reasons, not least of which many of these schools have service requirements, and they think it's a much more meaningful, that CAP is a much more meaningful way to address that requirement as opposed to simply volunteering. And that's really what CAP is about. Elevating student engagement above simple service and particularly to the policy level. So it provides them with an opportunity to apply some of the stuff that they're already learning in the classroom and apply it to address something that they think is really important in their community. Public policy, as I mentioned, is a really critical element of CAP. In fact, it's the thread that unifies the entire curriculum and the project experience for students. We really want students to emerge and develop that confidence to not only examine policy, but to even influence it based on their findings, their research, and some of their civic actions. Those civic actions, that's what CAP provides, a platform for them to connect with people in their community. I always point out to students how important it is for them to realize that they're developing a network. They're contacting and connecting with other influential people in their community who may already be working on the project or the problems or issues that they're also concerned with addressing. And finally, gaining practical and professional skills that will promote their success beyond high school. I always mention to students working in groups, meeting deadlines, creating and presenting a product. Those are the things that adults get paid for. And we really want CAP to be more than just an assignment. We want it to really be a civic experience for students that's going to have outcomes, that's going to really promote their success beyond high school. So these are the essential elements of the CAP experience for students. They will have curriculum, 5 core lessons that the teacher is going to teach. That's going to introduce them to provide them with a context of citizenship, the importance of policy, and how to narrow the focus of their CAP projects. And we have project planners that are essentially a roadmap of sort of civic action for the students to follow, a series of prompts asking them what it is that they're interested in addressing, why it's important, that's really critical for the students to be able to articulate why it's important to address the problem or issue that they decided, and what are some of the civic actions that they plan to complete. And finally, a culminating activity, which makes it a project-based learning resource, because at this point, CAP provides them, once again, with a platform to share what they found, share what they've been able to do to an audience beyond their school campus. So let's go to the website. For those of you that have already registered, this is where you'll go as soon as you log into the CAP website, the teacher dashboard. You'll see the CAP lessons, a couple of extra resources, but we're going to go straight to the Getting Started with CAP page. And this page has 3 easy steps for getting started with CAP. For those of you that haven't registered, you can register on the CAP website. If you look up at that top right-hand corner, you'll see Teacher 2. That's where you'll usually see the login window and also opportunity portal to register yourself to the CAP website. After which, within 24 hours, you'll get your own username and password that you'll be able to personalize once you get it. The next step is to enroll your students to establish your CAP classroom. And we've made that super easy. You click on that Submit Class Roster. You give us your name, your school, city, and state. If you go below, you can upload a Word document with your student roster, an Excel sheet, or even simply type in the student name manually into that box. Once you submit it, you will receive usernames and passwords for all of your students, and that will establish a CAP classroom whose progress you can monitor on the website. And we'll get into that a little later.
So an important point about submitting your class roster and why you might want to do that. I mean, students will have access to some of the features on the CAP website without submitting a roster, but when you have that roster, you're able to have your students participate in the discuss board. You're able to get feedback from experienced CAP youth board students who can guide the students along their way. So it really is beneficial because it makes CAP expand outside of the classroom and kind of makes it more national for them.
That's a good point, Lori, because it really expands their network. And in this case, it really connects them with, again, students that have already completed CAP projects or are also in the process of developing them. It's sort of a way of them to participate in some peer consultation. So then after you've registered yourself, established your CAP classroom, you can then proceed to teach the lesson. So let's start and go to the lesson page. And as you'll see, there are 5 core lessons that we recommend you deliver the classroom to the students so that they can develop a really solid foundation for developing their project. So we'll go to lesson 1. Take a look at what a CAP lesson looks like. You'll see every CAP lesson has an overview, state standards addressed, and those are the states that we've aligned the 12th grade government standards to CAP, or the lesson to the 12th grade government standards for those states. We've also aligned it with the Common Core state standards. And we've also aligned it with the proven practices, which you can find in the Guardian report, which is also, you can also locate on the CAP website, and we'll show you where you can find that report a little later. But after you have the standards and the proven practices, you have the objectives, a list of all the materials that you'll need to deliver the lesson, and if you go a little lower, step-by-step instructions for delivering the lesson in your classroom. In addition to the lesson plan, on the left-hand column, we have a video of this lesson being delivered in the CAP classroom. And right below, additional readings that you can assign to students if you want to take a deeper dive into the topic being covered in this particular CAP lesson. So it's really a complete lesson plan, a lot of additional resources that enhance the experience for the students and the teacher. And in this lesson, this really sets the stage for the CAP process. This is where students establish and define what citizenship is and really how it applies to their community, which ends up becoming a real great preview of what their CAP experience will be. The next lesson is an introduction to public policy, same exact format, an overview, standards, the proven practices and objectives. And in this lesson, the students are going to be asked to complete a news media search and look for examples of real world problems and issues being addressed in policy. And a real great outcome of this lesson and activity is that the students realize just how policy saturates our daily lives. Everything from what they eat, what they can wear, where they can eat it and where they can wear it. They really get an idea and begin to grasp how, once again, policy really saturates their daily lives. And once again, on the left-hand column, additional resources if you want to take a deeper dive into how important public policy is. I also want to know all of the handouts for each and one of the lessons are downloadable right there under preparation materials. So if you click on one of those, any one of those, a simple one-page reading that's part of the lesson on, once again, the importance of policy and what it is. And let's go to the next lesson, which is lesson 3, and this is really the critical threshold of the entire CAP process because this is where the students are going to narrow the focus of their CAP project. Identifying primary root causes, primary effects, and choosing one of those to become the focus of the CAP project. What's really important about this process is that it allows students to take really broad topics such as maybe high school dropout crisis and narrow it down to a primary root cause of, say, something like peer pressure, which is something that's readily accessible to them and also allows them to access the actual people whose policies they can influence to directly address that particular issue.
Yeah, and that narrowing down is super important because sometimes students will say, I want to work on homelessness, but that is such a broad topic. They really need to focus on what aspect of homelessness they want to particularly work on in order to have a successful experience through CAP. So that's why this lesson is really, really critical.
And it really allows them to circle back as to why did they choose that problem or issue in the first place? What is the impact of that problem or issue in their life and in their community? That's what makes it accessible, and that's going to sustain student buy-in as they develop the projects over the coming weeks. So we go to the next lesson. This is a really great lesson that involves students looking at case studies, once again, of actual problems and issues being addressed through policy. They then real brief readings on a particular problem or issue that's being addressed directly through policy. Students then, in groups, they do these readings, they complete these readings, and then they complete a policy analysis evaluating whether the policy is actually effective to address the problem described. So once again, we're emphasizing just how important policy is for them to really have sustainability for their ideas and their efforts to address any problem or issue in their community or society in general. And we finally go to the last lesson, policy making, the 3 branches of government. This is a great lesson because it illustrates one instance where the 3 branches of government interacted to first draft and adopt a policy, enforce that policy, and then ultimately rescind that policy under constitutional grounds. The case study that we decided to focus on in this lesson, if you go a little lower, Laura, the Chicago Gang Congregation Ordinance. There's a reading, and what's really great about this lesson that introduces the grade policy analysis too. And if we can click on that handout, It's a really effective way for students to analyze policies and determine just how effective they are in actually addressing the problem.
I just noticed a question in the chat that I want to take 1 second to answer quickly. There's a question about whether these lessons work well with regular government students as well as AP. And just want to point out the lessons we're going through right now are the sort of regular, traditional government class lessons, but we do have on the dashboard a section for AP government that we'll show you later.
So those are the 5 core CAP lessons. If you'll see on the right, there are an additional 10 lessons. These lessons are standalone, and they're really made to be taught at your discretion or based on student need or interest. Some really great ones are the persuading lesson, setting the public agenda, using the media, persuading policymakers. These are really some of the lessons that speak directly to the development of the CAP project by students, because at some point in their development of their project, they're actually going to be challenged to do some of these things. So these are really great supplemental lessons. They're not necessary for the students to complete, but they're just really great enhancements in terms of helping the students develop their projects.
So now that you've seen the lessons, the 5 core lessons, I'm just going to orientate you a little bit about some of the highlights for the CAP website. As Gregory was mentioning, the regular CAP lessons are here to your left. We also have available the CAP lessons for AP Gov and Politics, as Sarah was mentioning, and those are specifically designed for AP teachers, and it's also designed to meet the new project requirement for that class. And if you're in middle school, we forgot to mention this. If you're in middle school, please, you're welcome to stay on this webinar, but we will be holding a special webinar just for middle school. And then if you are a middle school teacher, when you register for CAP, you will only see the middle school lessons. You won't see the regular CAP high school lessons or the AP lessons. So in addition to the lessons, you'll see that we have some helpful tools. We have FAQs. We have working in groups, so you can learn a little bit more about if you want to have a whole class work on a project, you want to have small group work on the project, if you want independent students who want to independently work on projects. We have the Getting Started with CAP tab that Gregoria went over. We have the Teacher Resource tab where teachers have created resource to enhance their CAP classrooms, which includes assessment. We have a lot of teachers who've created different ways to assess CAP, including peer evaluations, presentation evaluations, and project evaluations. Down here, you'll see the planners, which will be the focus of our next webinar. We have both online planners as well as PDF planners. And again, those are to guide the students through the CAP process. We have the rubrics for the planners, and we have the student resources. So there are 2 places on the CAP website that are really important for students, and that is the toolkit and the Connect tab. So I'm going to take you to the toolkit. This is really an inventory of civic actions for students. So after you've taught the content and students are starting on their planners, they can really use this toolkit to advance their CAP project. So say, for example, they want to do an opinion poll to survey what others think about this particular issue. They can click on this PDF here, and they can get examples of how to create an opinion poll. Same thing if they were wanting to create a petition, or if they're trying to create interview questions to speak to a public official. So these again are all tools that students can use. So if they're never should be done, say I'm finished, no, or I don't know what to do next, you can always refer them to the CAP toolkit.
Yeah, I was just going to add what you just said, Laura, that I think Gregorio mentioned at the beginning that part of the idea for CAP is that this should be as student-driven, as student-directed as possible. Yes, you as the teacher have the role of teaching the core lessons, but the idea is that then the kids can really take this project and run with it on their own, and the toolkit is a great place that you can send them when they come to you and say, Miss, what am I supposed to do next? It takes some of the pressure off of you and then put some of the work back on them.
And really, it's almost really a guide, because that's really what you'll be assessing the students on, is the variety of civic actions that they select and complete to develop their CAP project. Because as I always say, they are not going to solve gun violence or homelessness in a single semester, but being able to practice different types of civic actions is only going to make them that more able and capable to really make a solid impact on that problem or issue, especially if they continue to work on that problem or issue beyond your classroom, which has happened in some of our classes or among some of our students.
And I guess just to address some of the issues that are coming up in the chat. So, for example, someone asked, does CAP teaching this as social studies rather than a government-only class? This was originally created as a practicum for a government class, but we've had teachers over the years use CAP in a variety of classes, from Latin American studies to civil disobedience to social justice, science, ELA. So it has worked in a variety of different classroom settings.
And just to clarify, the rationale for developing it for 12th grade government is because that's when teachers are able to intentionally address public policy and teach students public policy. But many teachers will tell you that public policy applies to many of the courses and disciplines that Laura was talking about, especially if you're thinking about incorporating a civic engagement or a project-based learning component. We think that that particular process needs to be anchored by the policy component, because once again, that's what's going to make the student ideas and efforts sustainable beyond the service.
So another important place on the CAP website for students is the Connect tab. So if you look here, it says Connect. And you'll see that it has 3 separate sections. One is a discuss section where students can get advice about their civic action project, a publish section where they can publish some of their research or papers that they're doing on their CAP project, and a share, which is where they can share what they're doing on CAP through social media. I'm going to go over the discuss tab because I think it's a really valuable way that students can receive feedback outside from you, the teacher. You can see that there's a variety of different topics here, from closed campus, school lunches, littering, bullying. These are real issues that real students across the nation are working on. And not only are they sharing these issues with students from other schools and other states, it's also a place where they can get feedback if they have a problem, they're not sure what to do next. We have a CAP Youth Board, which are students who have done CAP and have applied and gone through a process and been trained to respond to these students on the board. So it's a really neat resource because they've been there, they've done it, and they can really help point students in the right direction.
I just want to quickly address a couple of other important questions that have come up in the chat. One question about seeing some past examples, some examples of past finished products. We're going to be looking at one shortly, so stay tuned for that. And then also, as far as questions about standards-based grading and mastery learning, the rubrics are aligned with the Common Core state standards.
There are several rubrics. We have some rubrics that are designed to assess civic competency, but we have several teacher developed rubrics that do actually address directly some of the standard questions or concerns that you're bringing up right now.
Specifically, if I remember correctly, a number of history and social science writing related standards as they're articulated in the Common Core and also in many other new state standards.
So those are the highlights of the dashboard. Again, everything that you or your students need to do CAP can be located on the dashboard. We have a lot of other information, but really, if you want to be focused, you can find everything that you need on your particular dashboard. There's different ways that teachers have introduced CAP to their students. One is through doing lesson 1. That really sets up the CAP classroom. It as Gregory was mentioning before, it provides students with doing a brainstorm and trying to figure out what are some of the action that citizens need to take. What's the knowledge that they need to have? What are the dispositions they need to have? What about skills? So that's really kind of when you're done, is an inventory of what an effective citizen needs to know and do.
And what's really valuable about this lesson is that the outcome is that the students create a profile of citizenship that's a direct reflection of the values and priorities that they think are important in order to effectively address something in their community. I mean, that's what's really great about this, because it establishes the context, it allows them to embrace the role of citizenship, and it's also a preview of what their CAP experience is going to be following that first lesson. Because as Laura said, they're identifying in those 4 categories of knowledge, skills, and attitude, what are the important things that a citizen needs to know to be effective in those categories. So it's a really key lesson. It's a strong way to start for the students, and it demystifies that whole term of citizenship and makes it something that they can embrace, and it makes it personal to them.
Right, and it makes it go beyond your legal standing.
Yes.
You know,
It's not a punitive term or a legal term. It's really the concept of citizenship and the democracy in the tradition of democracy really throughout world history.
So another way to introduce CAP to students, and one of our favorite ways, is actually using student work, which someone was asking. Is there examples of student work? Yes, we have a whole page dedicated to student work. If you look here across the tabs of the CAP website, you can do civic action and student action. You'll see an inventory of student work. So everything from vacant lots to gentrification to homelessness. Those are some of the highlighted CAP student projects that we have here. But also, if you look to the left here, we also have topics such as animals, crime and safety, immigration, social justice. Those are other categories where students have been passionate about, and we have posted examples of student work. Another point about student work is that there's a variety here. So it's not just all videos, although there are a lot of videos documenting their student action projects. There's also websites, and there's PowerPoints. So I guess when you're going to introduce this to students, the whole concept of CAP, really think about when you're picking a student example, what kind of example you want to show as far as media is concerned, and also what topic do you think would really resonate with your students. So we're going to go ahead and show you one student project, and we're going to have you do what we would ask students to do. So when you're looking at this particular project, we want you to be able to identify 3 things. One, what is the particular issue that this project is addressing? 2, what are the civic actions that these students are taking? Meaning, what are the different things that you see these students doing? And 3rd, what is the policy connection? So how is government somehow involved in this project?
So, shortly after starting our investigation with the community map and conducting interviews on fellow members of the community, we noticed something that caught our attention. For one, in the interviews, many hinted at the fact that their community lacks certain resources, and from those comments we realized that many useful community assets could easily be put in place of the empty, unused land abundant within our community. After going over interviews and conducting research, we chose to investigate what could possibly be done to convert vacant lots / abandoned property into community-based properties. From there, we compiled a list of supporting questions, which include: what are some substitutes for vacant lots? How do vacant lots affect the community? What is the process involved with converting vacant lots into actual assets? And finally, what type of control does the City of Anaheim have over vacant lots?
The first step we took in order to obtain more information regarding vacant lots and city planning was to check the Anaheim City website. It was here that we discovered a virtual map that went by the name Andy's Map. Andy's Map allowed us to investigate the construction of new projects in the city of Anaheim, while also providing information on proposed ideas for vacant lots. Although most of the construction going on in Anaheim had to do with the restoration of deteriorating businesses, we took note of the various residential complexes and unnecessary hotels that were proposed for development. These expensive projects in our community is what led us back to one of our root causes for vacant lots, which is the rising prices in housing that leads to foreclosures. Considering the fact that 24% of Anaheim's residents make an annual income of less than $25,000, the possibility of foreclosures seems likely in our neighborhood.
Next, we searched for possible solutions for the vacant lot problem. While also considering the lack of resources and services that our neighborhood possessed, we came across various articles regarding the use of vacant land. But with tipsters' 50 creative uses for raw land was the most helpful. The article mentions the development of parks, community gardens, and parking lots, which are community assets that Anaheim fails to provide for its growing population. Not only would these additions be aesthetically pleasing, but they would also be beneficial to the surrounding communities.
Hi, I just wanted to talk about one of the problems I experienced in my neighborhood, which resulted from, in my opinion, not the best use of land. So I live in an apartment complex that is right next to an empty space. Last week, I noticed that the empty lot was actually being converted into a private parking lot for a church. In the past few years, I actually noticed that a lot of residents from my apartments were struggling to find parking after the nearby homes were limiting available parking spaces with city-issued parking signs. That gradually forced more families to park in the nearby parks, such as Majeska and Barton Park. That also led to an increase in issued parking tickets among the residents who have more cars than parking spaces allotted to them by the apartments. I felt that this issue could have been relieved if the city saw that the empty land could possibly be made into a parking lot for the apartments or homeowners, but I do acknowledge that that may not be a very realistic possibility. The point is, things like this happen all the time where an unused piece of land goes to waste on something that may not actually be of any good use to the community. Finally, we wanted to find out if there was an existing task force that was already tackling the issue of vacant lots, so we reached out to David C., a principal planner from the city of Anaheim, via email. According to Mr. C., there is no task force in existence, but he did mention that any complaints concerning unkept lands should be reported to Anaheim's Preservation Force. He also brought up the fact that most people do not discuss the possibility of construction on the vacant lots because of fear that something unwanted will be created. So for our action, we created a PSA to inform the community and others who may want to take action and put their own community vacant lots to good use. Here is just a short clip of the video.
Yes, vacant lot.
Right.
That
That's
was
pretty
a
obvious.
no-brainer. But you know what? This is exactly, I like the setup because I always want to let students, we're not asking trick questions, we're setting them up to succeed. So yes, vacant lots is the correct answer.
And what were some of the civic actions that the students took? What were some of the things that you saw the students do?
Think of the one maybe you thought was most effective or compelling. Yes, made a PSA.
They made a PSA, they contacted the city, right? They did research, they went to the city website.
And what really made, I think, their PSA effective is that it included a call to civic action from the audience of viewers, which once again helps them build a constituency.
Right, talk with local residents. What about the connection to policy?
What was the policy connection?
That one might not be as
This can be a little
obvious.
tricky, yes. We're modeling a tricky question for students.
Do you see any connection to policy?
Yes, they did look at existing policies with the city use of land, absolutely. And they contacted officials within the city, right? So they really danced around and they really got really close. I mean, at this point, they're really poised to actually influence or maybe even create or modify an existing policy in order to directly address the issue that they selected. And this is really one of the primary outcomes of CAP, that the students emerge from this experience feeling confident enough to actually influence the decisions of the decision makers in their community. So I think these students did a really great job with this project. I really do.
That's basically the CAP experience, right? So you had the civics government content that Gregoria went over, that you, the teacher, are teaching. You add that to issues that matter to students, and that student choice is super important because that's the buy-in for the students. That's what makes it, important to them.
And that's your defense if they start getting bored. You remind them, this is what you thought was important. So now, remind them this is what they said was really important to address. So.
And then you have that policy connection and civic actions, and that policy connection is really where we want students to go because that's where that sustaining goes in. And Gregoria always uses the example with students where it's, for example, you have a dirty park and, you plan a cleanup on Saturday to clean up the park, and that's great, but then next week that park is dirty again. So really, maybe that park needs more trash cans. We really need to dive a little bit deeper to try to solve that problem. So that policy connection is really key to CAP. And then you end with the presentation of the issue. All the students, culmination of students' work presented, hopefully outside of just a classroom setting.
That's a really important part of the process.
So a real quick note about assessment. On the CAP website, there are places for assessment through the planners as well as teacher-created assessment. But an important point that we wanted you to note on that is really you're not focusing on did they solve homelessness, right? You're really focusing on the quality and quantity of civic actions that students are doing. Do they know if they're faced with a problem, who to contact, how to contact, when to contact? All those things that we do to become civically engaged and to try to impact a certain problem. So that's really where that focus is on the assessment piece, not on the accomplishment. And you know, some kids are only able to do public service announcements. We have other kids who are really successful actually completing their CAP by creating a keep clear zone or putting in a stop sign or getting an anti-bullying campaign. But really, again, it's not did they solve the problem, it's do they know the steps along the way.
Exactly, as somebody just said in the chat section, the focus is on the process.
Exactly.
Speaking of process, the process that we're working on right now is really to provide, ongoing professional development for you all as you sort of take your students on through this CAP journey. So what that's going to look like is that this webinar series will continue after today. On October 17th, we'll have a webinar focused on how to help your students take civic action, and we'll address some of these questions that Laura started to answer just now in more depth then. At that time, we'll also take a close look at the planners that are available online and in PDF version. On November 8th, we'll have a webinar focused on showcasing your students' work. Again, going back to that question of really trying to help the kids present to an audience larger than just their classmates. And we'll get into that more in November. Interspersed with these webinars is going to be a series of online reflection and coaching from our CAP teacher leaders. Quinn Riddle-Ortiz teaches government, AP government, and econ, and is the history department chair at a school here in Los Angeles. And Patty Vasquez teaches government and AP government and is the social studies department chair at Bell Gardens High School, just outside of LA. The place where you'll be interacting with Quinn and Patty is on the CAP teacher forum. So when you get to your teacher dashboard, just click on that teacher forum button. And you've got sort of three things happening here. The first is professional development, and that's where, like I said, you'll get that online reflection coaching from Quinn and Patty. There will be several discussion boards. The first one focuses on just what we've been talking about in this webinar, getting started with CAP, really kind of looking at, okay, how did it go as I did lessons 1 through 3 with my kids in my classroom? What are tips that Patty and Quinn and maybe other teachers have, and sort of where do we go from there? The second part of the teacher forum is just a sort of a quick frequently asked questions section. Some of these are really common questions that teachers have often asked over the years through CAP, or through the years about CAP. But if any questions aren't answered there, there is a little discussion board down here where if you have another question, you can post it there to hear from Quinn and Patty. And then the third part of the teacher forum is a place where you can share your story. We really want to be able to celebrate and recognize the work that you and your students are doing through the CAP process. So you can post on Twitter and Instagram using our hashtag CRFCAP. If you haven't already, like us on Facebook so that you can easily tag us in any posts about this, about your work on CAP. We'd love to receive photos and exemplars tweets, you name it, just to see what your kids are up to and what they're doing. If there's stuff that for whatever reason you don't want to post on social media but still want to share with us, you can upload photos or samples of your students' work here, or use a file sharing service if it's a bigger file. So the bottom line is we really want to hear from you so that we can celebrate and recognize and give shout outs to you and your students for the work that you're doing. We may reach out to you if we have other teachers in your community who are interested in doing CAP. We're always looking for teachers to support with professional development and other recognition opportunities. So please keep us posted so we know what you're up to. And then just for the next steps in this process, like I mentioned before, really the first thing would be to give it a shot, teach lessons 1 through 3 and check in with us on the forum. We hope to see you at the next couple of webinars, and then keep us posted on social media. Once we sort of go through this learning process together of implementing CAP, for teachers who participate in all of the webinars and in the online discussions, we will provide you with a certificate to sort of recognize and acknowledge your expertise in civic learning. And this part is optional. We're happy to provide a letter to your principal documenting that as well.
I guess we want to take time now. It's like we're supposed to end. It's 4:45. We're right on the money here. But we do want to answer any questions that you might have. And I think we saw one here about the online planners.
Yeah.
That's from Matt. And Matt, we're actually going to be focusing on that particular aspect of the CAP process, and that would be the online planners that you'll be able to view. Once you establish your classroom, you will be able to view the completed planners of the students as they complete them, review them, and essentially let them approve their next civic action and let them go ahead. Really, it's just an opportunity for you to make sure that they're moving, they're on course, and that they're not going to do something that might get them in trouble. This is your chance as the coach, which is the teacher's sole role after you deliver the lessons. You're simply a sounding board, you're providing feedback, and you're just simply coaching them along the way, allowing the students to decide what they're going to do next, how they plan to complete that civic action, reflect on it, and then let you know how it's going to inform their next civic action.
Just to reiterate, you will have your own CAP classroom. However, if it's a discuss, that is opened up nationally to all the students who are registered on CAP. Any other questions? Is forums the place for me to go?
Teachers, yes, Matt, that's where you would go for peer support from Quinn and Patty. If you had questions, they're very experienced CAP teachers. They've been teaching it almost from the beginning. So that you would go for them for any advice that you think a teacher would be the best source for the answer. But as Sarah mentioned, if you have any other questions about the CAP process, you can contact any of us and we'll walk you through that particular component for that question.
Yeah, as far as the middle school webinar, we don't have dates yet. We need to get in contact with our friends in Florida to establish that. So JLo, you can contact any of us. We all have the same information, but we're hoping to get something out about a middle school webinar by next week. We're also happy to just have a phone call with you or a Zoom meeting. We can walk you through the middle school materials if you want to do this right now and can't wait for the webinar. We're happy to do that. All right, well, thank you so much.